Welcome to my behind the scenes tips and tricks for my do-it-yourself custom carrying case for all your paranormal gear. Now, if you like that video and you want to make one yourself, this is where you want to be. I'm going to go through a few things, so let's get started. First off, I am using a DeWalt toolbox, one made for a drill. But that doesn't mean that you have to go dumpster diving and find one exactly like that for yourself. Perhaps you have something in your garage that you can use. Perhaps there's a garage sale down the street and you can pick up an old toolbox for a cheap price. And if you fail there, you can always go to a dollar store or a Walmart or something of that sort and pick up a toolbox for probably under 10 bucks. No matter what kind of box you get, I recommend trying to find something that's empty on the inside. I spend a lot of time and effort cutting away those components that were used to hold the drill in place. If you simply had an empty box to start with, you're already set to put the foam inside and start crafting. That brings us to the foam. And what you need for foam is the high-end stuff like I was using. This stuff is usually used for packaging computer components, laptops, maybe stereo equipment and stuff like that. So if you can go to your local department store or a specialty computer store and check out their recycling and garbage bins, you might be able to find some of this stuff that they're just throwing away. If all else fails, you can always go inside and just say, hey, I gotta do it myself project. I'm looking for some foam. Do you have anything in the back that you're about to throw away? So with that in mind, now you have your toolbox, you have your foam. Let's get started. I first wanted to touch on blocking out your piece and talk about cutting deep into foam with an X-Acto knife. Let's say I cut in like this. My blade is actually right only at the start of my initial cut, and the end of the blade is actually already almost at the end of my cut here. So you don't want to just drag all the way across to where you would be finishing, because now I've actually cut all the way through this piece right here that I wanted to use as a barrier if I was to cut out this small square. So what you need to do is you need to cut in like this, and as you're getting to the end, you need to stand up your blade vertically, pull out, do the same thing on the next piece, vertically, and pull out. Otherwise you risk cutting right through this barrier, and then you're going to have a weaker structure. Anytime you're blocking multiple pieces, let's say these two squares in, I always line it out. But this gives a problem of, what am I actually cutting out? Am I cutting out this section right here? Am I cutting out this big block? We don't know. So one thing you might want to do is draw a big X through the sections that you're actually removing. So at a quick glance, you can tell what you're cutting out and what you aren't. If, for example, you are using a measuring tape like this or a ruler to line your cuts, and then you're cutting like this, you might not be able to see those X's, you might not be able to see where your cut starts and ends. So in this case, you may want to mark the actual locations where your cut starts and stops, so I know I'm starting here, I'm cutting to here, and I need to stop and not cut into this. Lastly, when dealing with foam, I've already made my initial cuts cutting out these block pieces, and I wanted to show you that what it looks like on the opposite side. Now this might be a little hard to see, but you see this reflective piece right here? This is foam that is still attached right in the corner. So when I went in with my blade and I drew up like this, I didn't quite make it all the way to the end and cut through here. I rose up a tiny bit, and that leaves us with a little edge. There's two things you can do. If it's very, very just surface, you can actually just pull, grab on either side, and just give it a tug to open it up. And that will break apart any loose pieces that are just barely hanging on. Now, this one right here is actually holding in a little bit stronger. So I'm actually going to take my blade, I'm going to stick it into the cut opening, and I'm just going to do a light sawing action just to get all the way to the end here. I actually have a little piece left right here. I could do the tug method, but I'm actually just going to stick this in, do a light saw, and boom, we're free, except this corner is still grabbing. You can see how it's divoted down here. Do a quick little saw there, tuck this one in here and a little saw, and we're free, just like that. Now, when you're cutting through, one thing you want to be aware of is where you end your cut. I already mentioned this. You pull through like so, and then you want to end up and down like this. If you're at an angle at all, you're going to start cutting through this barrier edge and risk actually removing like this right here. You can see I cut all the way through this top area, pretty deep actually. Hopefully you guys can see that on camera. But if I was to cut any deeper, this now becomes a weak corner. So when I'm sticking things in and pulling them out more and more, if this is a tight fit as well, it's going to apply pressure, it's going to keep ripping. And actually you can see how deep I went all the way through, all the way down to the bottom here. Pretty deep. So this is a very weak corner, something that I need to be aware of. And I did a little bit of a cut right here, but nothing to speak of. All right, let's continue on. I just wanted to show you the rest of this. I'll do the tug method for as much as I can because it's quicker, just to give you guys less to watch and me less to edit. I'm gonna just push it through, tearing it instead of cutting it. So when you do the tear method, you're going to see I have some leftover residue here that I'm going to have to go in and cut away, which is harder than it looks apparently. Okay, so this, when cutting foam, I recommend having a 1-inch barrier between each item that you're going to have in. That's what this is right here. You're going to have a lot to play with. You're going to have a lot of cushion. This here is 1/2 inch, and as you saw earlier with my miscut, 1/2 inch doesn't give you a lot to play with if you make a mistake like this. I almost cut halfway through that because I went 1/4 too deep, 1/4 of an inch too deep. Anytime you're blocking in your cuts, by that I mean drawing your lines of where you're going to have your opening sitting. Sorry, my light just went out. You're going to want to draw on the back side. Okay, so the back side of your foam that's going to be sitting face down. So that would be this side here, because if you're cutting in from the top, you're going to risk having wider cut openings like we showed you earlier right on top versus on the bottom where it's less chance of it tearing because it's going to be glued down. And 2, it's going to be messy from all your writing on here. So mark the bottom, cut, and then you have a nice clean face on the top. Now when we're marking, what I like to do is start on paper. And I'm just going to show you something really quick. What I do, I block out the size of my piece. Maybe it's 15 inches, you can do centimeters, whatever you need, by 10 inches. And let's say I want 4 openings. I'm just going to roughly sketch these in like this. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. Then I'm going to say I want a 1-inch barrier on each side. Okay, and then I need to look at how big my opening is, and you're going to figure that out by actually measuring the length of your unit. Let's say this opening is 5 inches, and this one is also 5 inches. So we have 10 inches, 11, 12, that gives us 3 inches here. And then you just measure that out on your piece of paper. So you'd measure out 1 inch from the edge, make a mark, make a little line, make a line on your foam at 1 inch, measure from that 1 inch to where it's going to end 5 inches, mark that down. Then you're going to measure out 3 inches in between this area, mark that down, and so on and so forth. Follow this all the way across. Do the same thing going down. Then you're going to do it on your foam, and once you've done it on your foam, then you're going to take the actual pieces, sit them how they would be situated on your foam, and make sure it looks right. If something looks off, then before you cut anything, you can make the appropriate changes on paper and on your foam. This is the glue I used to hold my foam in. After I glued it in and left it overnight with weights on top, as recommended on instructions, I gave it a tug and tried to pull it out. Not forcefully, but I tried to pull it out and it was solid. So I think this is going to work great. Gorilla Glue construction adhesive, all surfaces. So it works on plastic as well, which is what we have. If you just had an empty box, that would be best because you can just grab. I'm thinking black bears are best. Beats bears, Battlestar Galactica. Okay. Regardless what kind of box you get, regardless of what kind of box you get, I recommend getting something that's empty. I spent a lot of time and effort cutting away all those pieces. Oh my goodness. No matter what kind of box you get, I